What's good, everybody? Welcome to Believe in Celtics. I'm your host, Warren Sean. Alongside me, as always, the great Gary Washburn. He's out here road tripping, and you know what it is. We're your host and resource for everything Celtics this season and all seasons. Gary, you're in my neck of the woods after going through the Texas state. Now you're in South Florida. Gary, what's good, man? Good to see you as always.
Yeah, everything's good. Ready for the last game of this road trip. Been successful for the Celtics' first two games after losing that game to Denver, coming back and beating Houston and Dallas. Now, I think their toughest assignment, although they get a couple of days off and they'll be fully healthy, is that new look Miami Heat. As we know, the Heat made some changes on Tuesday. We'll see when Mr. Rozier will be in action, but I would assume it will at least be by, if not tomorrow against Memphis, Thursday against his former team. And I think that will be a very interesting matchup, and we'll see how that shakes out with the Heat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have to structure our show a little bit differently here because there's some major implications for the Boston Celtics with two rivals in the Eastern Conference, two big things happening with the Terry Rozier trade, and then obviously the Milwaukee Bucks firing their their head coach Adrian Griffin, and now potentially bringing in Doc Rivers, another former Celtic. So lots and lots to kind of discuss there as always, but we got to do our plugs. Make sure you follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. Make sure you follow Gary at G Washburn Globe and check out all his stuff over at the Boston Globe, his great writings and coverage of sports in general. Make sure you follow Believe at Believe Network or at Believe Sports, and give our show a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're tuning in on, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, and leave some comments below as well too. So again, we're going to try to give you an express version here too. We're going to jump around a little bit here. Celtics, as Gary alluded to, tough loss against the Denver Nuggets at home. First home loss of the season. Tatum, misses a turnaround J to, that would have, I guess, tied that game. Move on, play against now Ime Udoka again in Houston Rockets. Win that game pretty handily, mostly for the most part. Then Dallas, which has been problematic for the Boston Celtics in years past, especially in Dallas with Luka hitting game winners and so forth. But get that W despite Luka torching them, with 30 plus 18 rebounds, 13 assists or whatever it was, just going absolutely crazy. But the week ahead, as you allude to, game against the Miami Heat and a game against the Los Angeles Clippers over the weekend. What are you looking forward to? Obviously the Heat are going to look different here too, but Miami hopefully will have a win, I think, in some ways, because if they lose 3 straight going into that game with Boston and Terry Rozier coming in tow, I don't think that's going to be good for Boston in any capacity. I just think the Bills going to come due at some point. But then also again, big weekend against the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers will have revenge on their mind from Boston shellacking them without Kawhi Leonard and the Boston Celtics road trip over out west. Your thoughts on these 2 games ahead here too, but obviously we'll talk a little bit more Miami Heat in the Around the Association segment.
Yeah, important game for the Celtics just for their psyche. I mean, they beat Miami earlier in the season. It was a very difficult game. I think that people were not sure what to think of the Heat when they didn't get Dame Lillard in the offseason. They didn't really make any offseason additions. They got Thomas Bryant, and it hasn't worked out. He's on the end of the bench. Josh Richardson has become a bench piece for them. They've dealt with a myriad of injuries. So this will be an interest, but they're still, I think, 24-19, still in the thick of that, 6 or 7. I'm sure they don't want to be in the play-in, so they want to get that 6 seed at least. And Miami, they don't really care about the seed as long as they're in the tournament and they can flip the switch, and they've proven that they can do that. So, but I do think it's an important game for the Celtics to show that they can beat Miami at full strength. I don't think that I think Butler is likely going to play. Rozier will likely be in the mix, and Hero is now healthy, and we'll see if there's any other. They're the king of the knick-knack injuries. They always find reason to rest guys. So for me, I do think it's a more important game for the Celtics just to say, hey, we're national TV game, quote-unquote NBA rivalry week. We're here to stay. We're here to make a point here. Like, we're better than you, and we've learned from last year. Let's get this win. I think that's what the Celtics are thinking. I think it's an important game for them. I think it's a reason why they rested Porzingis as opposed to maybe playing them in Dallas in a back-to-back, is they want to be ramped up for this game. I don't know. I think they play the Heat once again. They come at Super Bowl Sunday. They come back to Miami in a couple of weeks. But this is an important game for the Celtics. I'm not the most critical game. I'm not going to put too much on it. but just a test to say, hey, this is the team we're likely going to see in the playoffs, because as you know, Warren, the Celtics and the Heat are going to probably meet. There's somewhere if it's the conference semifinals or the conference finals, especially if Miami does make some more moves, they're going to be ready. The Celtics will be ready. So a very interesting matchup and another chapter in this rivalry.
Yeah, I think all very well said, and obviously we'll dive more into the Terry Rozier trade specifically here in the next segment. But I agree with you 1,000% here. You don't want to give the Miami Heat anything, and even though they're not going to take a whole lot into it, with it being a regular season game, and you're right, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami plays everybody and then Butler misses the next 5 games. I think they're going to want to match up with Boston just to kind of see where things are at to some degree. And I'm looking forward to that matchup, and hopefully Boston will be able to rise to that proverbial challenge. The Celtics are a little Heat-like in some degrees, where different guys are taking nights off kind of throughout. So they're load managing, but just not everybody at the same time. So KP will get a night off, Drew will get a night off, Jalen will get a night off, that type of thing. And that goes to show the level of confidence that the Celtics have in this roster. It was like, hey, we may not always need everybody to try to get things done. And it kind of taps into what we spoke a little bit about a couple of weeks ago, overcoming adversity kind of throughout the course of the season, which I think is an important aspect for this roster. Saturday's game against, again, versus the LA Clippers, huge matchup again. Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, Ty Lue just doing an amazing job on the sidelines, turning things around there. Anything that we should be cognizant of? I know the Clippers are going to be down some big men. They lost, Zubac,
Yeah.
For a significant amount of time. Still have Plumlee and again, former Celtic Daniel Tice, coming into the fold. Your thoughts on that game coming into the weekend, and then another big a week ahead, with I think the Pelicans and the Pacers after that, but one game at a time here. Your thoughts on the Clippers and the Celtics matchup this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, important game, and I think obviously the Clippers will be looking back to that December 23rd matchup where the Celtics shellacked them, as you said. Now, Kawhi was not in that game, but the rest of the Clippers were, and they were manhandled in the second half. So I think the Celtics, you got to be aware of the revenge factor here, which is, I think, is common, and they're going to come out with some different wrinkles. They played the Celtics once before. They're going to have a kind of a tenacity to them, I would say. James Harden, obviously, Paul George, a healthy Kawhi. Plumlee is back now. They missed some time with, I think, a knee injury. He is back. Norman Powell, Terrence Mann. So a very, very deep club, and a team that has played. They were playing well when the Celtics whooped them, but they've picked it up. And I just think we'll see the attitude of how well the Clippers play on the road, being in Boston, probably the start, I want to say, or maybe the second game of an East Coast trip for them. And so we'll see their state of mind. But if you're the Celtics, you get Friday off after that Thursday game, emotional game against the Heat, and then it's right back at it. And as you said, then the Pelicans, then the Pacers. Like someone said, like their schedule gets considerably easier, but I don't know when that starts. So maybe it's after the Pacers game, because I was told, it was supposed to be after the Christmas, game, because they had the Pistons and the Spurs. But then also that was backed up with the Thunder and the Bucks and and now you'll say that Houston, 2 against Houston, which is not a bad team, and then Dallas on the road, then Miami, then the Clippers. So they're taking it from all sides. And so far, as you said, Warren, they've managed it well, gotten guys days off, played well. I thought the win over Dallas was one of their biggest, most impressive wins of the year, considering the back-to-back. Jason and Jalen, neither of them played well in Houston, and they both played heavy minutes. So you got to think the energy might be down. Okay, this could be a game where Luka goes off and Kyrie, and the Mavs win handily. But after that first quarter, they picked it up, dominated pretty much the rest of the game, held off a little late run. So impressive win there. Now 2 days off. They get a good full practice on Wednesday, which is something they relish, is a time to just take chill and practice. And then let's see how they pan out over the next couple of days. But I think an important game, 2, 3, 4 game stretch for the Celtics. until that schedule somehow, whenever it does, lightens up.
Yeah. Whenever that ultimately is, I agree with 1,000%. Some other Celtics news, and we'll touch on this really briefly. The team select for the Olympics, and the Boston Celtics end up with 4 of their starters, if you will, and I guess the 4 Americans that could be eligible. We're going to make this situation here to try out for the Olympic team. From your sense of covering this roster, is this something that would it be special for all 4 guys to make it? I think that's obviously a very, very long shot, similar to the All-Star conversation, which we can have probably next week. But for Boston Celtics, at least invited to compete for a spot on the Olympic roster, says a lot about where the team is specifically, but overall the patriotism that I think all these guys have, and your sense of all these guys wanting to potentially make this roster.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think Jason and Jalen obviously the favorites. Drew Holiday did play on a 2020-21 team, actually. In Tokyo, so I'm sure he might have a shot. And then Derek White getting the invite, I think that's a very important aspect of it. This too is showing that the league and USA Basketball is all noticing his improvement in ascension. So I think it's a very good sign. Now will guys be tired? I'm sure. If you're a Celtic fan, you hope it's coming off a championship run where they don't have much time, because I know the Olympics start. I think maybe 5 weeks after the finals would end. So you don't know who will have the energy. I know Tatum has said he wants to play, and I think Brown has said he wants to play, 12 spots, and then we're talking about Curry, LeBron, Durant, a bunch of guys, Ant-Man. I mean, there's going to be some heavy competition for these spots. That should be an interesting training camp, and then you got guys like the Devin Bookers. Who knows, Is Zion going to be engaged and in shape and ready to go for that opportunity? We'll see how that goes. And obviously, that Olympics will be intriguing with France bringing their version probably of the dream team to this, probably the best team they've ever had to the Olympic Games, and they'll be the host country. So a lot to look out for after the season. But I think it's a good sign, Warren, that the Celtics are getting respect, and I think that it says a lot, especially with a guy like Derek White. He's finally getting the recognition he deserves after a very good year and a half so far, after coming to the Celtics midway through the 21-22 season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Boston has a lot to be proud of. But as you alluded to, I think in some ways, if they are coming off the heels of a championship, will that even be the best move? Because that impacts the next season as well, too. Just playing all that and not really getting the requisite time off to rest your body, and even the mental health that's going to be associated with that as well, too. And the pressure of, especially you get on a stacked team, you better win gold. So the aspects, like, you don't want that embarrassment of not being able to do that, no matter whoever else is on the roster itself. Let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back around the association with the biggest news of the day, which is obviously Terry Rozier to the Miami Heat, and Adrian Griffin getting fired by the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll be right back here on Believe in Celtics.
Are you ready to step up your style without compromising the planet? Introducing the exciting partnership between Blueview Footwear and the 19 Media Group Network. Just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 to start your sustainable style journey. Our friends over at Blueview Footwear are renowned for introducing the world's first fully biodegradable sneaker. By using plant-based plastics, they are leading a revolution in cleaner materials and manufacturing. They have sleek and contemporary styles that cater to a wide range of tastes. Blueview Footwear believes that fashion and sustainability can coexist harmoniously. Explore their incredible collection of eco-friendly footwear by visiting bit.ly/Blueview19. If you let us know you made a purchase, we'll shout you out on our next show. Again, just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 today, and you'll see the ultimate collaboration of fashion, sustainability, and media excellence.
And we're back here on Believe in Celtics. And so let's kind of touch on the first news that broke today. Today as we're recording. And Terry Rozier ends up in Miami for a first round pick and the salary, if you will, of Kyle Lowry to Charlotte. Woj reports that the Charlotte Hornets are probably not done making moves, which means they're going to strip this thing down to the studs. But they're not trying to just give up or buy out Lowry in the interim time. Don't know if Lowry himself will have a market. But in the interim, Miami gets a very, very capable scorer, and something that I was reflecting on before we even got on air and mentioned this last time, a couple times ago before we spoke. Tatum on a podcast some time ago, I think it was the JJ Redick podcast, said, hey, on that team, that had Terry, Gordon, Kyrie, etc. Jason's like, we should have let Terry do more. Terry has done more. Terry's having an amazing season, or was having an amazing season in Charlotte, with LaMelo being out, assisting, passing the ball, scoring the basketball, shooting the three. Terry Rozier is a very good basketball player, and this makes this Miami Heat team very, very tough, especially with somebody who's motivated in a way that he is, I think, when he plays the Boston Celtics. Your sense on this deal, how it kind of came about? Miami finally gets rid of Kyle Lowry. That's been rumored basically almost since he got there, or at least the season after he got there. Did you hear that this was kind of in the works? Obviously, Miami wanted Damian Lillard initially. That went to come to pasture over the past of the summer. But there were a lot of names that the Heat had been linked to. The Rozier one, it was probably floated around maybe in the last week or so and kind of got done. So I'm a little surprised that, with all the stuff that Miami's been linked to, that Rozier was a piece that ended up falling for them. Your thoughts on the deal and kind of how it all came to fruition?
Yeah, I think in terms of Rozier, he's a guy who, I think if you're Charlotte, you're asking, does he help us win? He's putting up, he's been there. He was there 4.5 years and put up, very solid numbers, right?
Yep.
And this year, 23.2 points, 36% from three, 46% from the field, which is a career high, 6.6 assists. Just a guy who is turned into a really quality ball player, and when you draft these guys, and the Celtics draft them in 15, you're unsure. He didn't, obviously it took him maybe, a year or two to really get his NBA legs ready and to be able to be a productive, consistent player. And, he had a couple of good years with the Celtics, before they kind of sent him to Charlotte and thinking that Kemba Walker was ready to step in and help them to a championship. Didn't work out that way. But Terry is a quality player, 29 years old, probably a little older than people think. You always think of young Terry with the Celtics, but Terry's almost 30 now. Mm-hmm. And so, he's a veteran guy who will step in. And the question is, will he blend into the Heat culture? And I think that's going to be something that he's going to probably have his role changed. Not as much, because Terry likes to put them up. As we know, he likes to put the shots up. 18 shots this year, 19 shots per game last year, 16 the year before that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he's a reliable scorer. And I just think Charlotte, and you look at NBA teams and the ones that win and the ones that don't, and Charlotte just never seems to have any good luck. I mean, the Michael Jordan's era didn't go well, and, they miss out on the Wemby sweepstakes, and they get a quality guy in Brandon Miller, who you build around him in a LaMelo Ball. But, if LaMelo can't ever really consistently stay healthy, he's always got an ankle problem or something like that. And so I think Charlotte's like, what? Like you said, Warren, we're going to sell these pieces. Miles Bridges is on an expiring contract, and he's got that really bad case that, that he settled. And, I'm sure there'll be teams interested in him, but I think Charlotte's probably ready to just put him in his tenure there. PJ Washington, he has a tradable contract. So I just think Miami took advantage of the fact that, Lowry had an expiring $30 million deal, so it's a nice salary cap bump for the Hornets. And then Rozier had 2 more years left in his deal, another protected first-round pick. And so for me, I just think it's a trade that fits both sides. One franchise trying to win right now, and the other franchise saying, you know what, maybe in the next 3 to 4 years we'll be competitive, and let's just tank it, try to get another lottery pick in, build around LaMelo and Brandon Miller. And it's kind of sad because North Carolina's a good basketball state, obviously more college basketball, but they just had nothing to cheer about over the last several years. They really haven't. The Gordon Hayward thing did not work out as expected. And he's in the final year of that deal. It's just, so to me, it's a thing that when you look at it, a good deal for both sides, but a testament to just kind of how some organizations just never can get by a break.
Yeah. I think from the Charlotte side, it's interesting because when they said more deals are probably to come, I was not necessarily taken aback, but I was like, well, dang, they didn't necessarily need to resign PJ Washington this offseason, but they did.
No, they didn't.
And so now he could potentially be on the move. Mark Williams, Nick Richards, guys like that. It's just, I don't know. And I'm curious to see who's going to want to take on, the Miles Bridges situation. He's played, his numbers say that he's played well. I think, from, that, you got to see how that works maybe on another roster, and what role is he willing to ultimately accept. And now, can you really just kind of build around Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball for the rest of this year? But really, really interesting situation. And I kind of have to chuckle, man, because Steve Clifford, you came back for this, bro. I feel bad. He came back, and I can't imagine that this is what he hoped and envisioned. This was how this was going to turn out. So don't know if he's going to be long for that position in a completely rebuilding situation. Switching back over to the Miami Heat, though, with Rozier there. So I don't know if Miami looked at that and said, listen, look how he's distributing the basketball. But that's because he's, as you alluded to, career high, and even in terms of usage. So because LaMelo was out so much this year, and Miami's system is very much, hey, we share this thing. Yes, they do have guys in and out of that lineup, but can he go there and be the primary playmaker, for that roster and that team in Spoelstra's system, playing alongside Tyler Hero, and even Bam Adebayo, who needs the ball in his hands and that's to be creative. Again, Bam's not a shot heavy person, but he has the ball a lot, especially of dribble handoffs and those types of things. Rozier as a playmaker in Miami system, your thoughts there and how that might ultimately look?
Yeah, I think he wants the responsibility to play point guard, and I think he'll step up his game and be a better distributor. I think he'll understand, listen, because, as I said, Terry turns 30 in March. Like, the young Terry should be gone. Like, this is a guy who is probably, who knows, this is his last big contract, right? And he'll be 32 when this contract ends. And who knows if he'll be able to sign someone in a 20, 30 million range next time. So he's playing because I think people around the league want to see, can Terry play on a winning team? Is he a winning player? Or is he a guy that puts numbers up on bad teams? The same with all those guys in Charlotte, LaMelo, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington. That's going to be the question. Can they play on a winning team in a more disciplined system than running up the floor and chuck threes as it was in Charlotte, or let LaMelo take 37-footers? So I think he'll step up his game, and I think he'll be challenged. He'll have to. And I think the leadership there, a.k.a. Jimmy Butler, will be like, listen, Terry, we done got you out of Charlotte. It's time for you to step up your game, because we're trying to win a chip here. And I think Terry will respond to the challenge. I said, 8th year in the league, I want to say, or 9th. So Terry been around a while now. He's put up the numbers in a small market with virtually zero attention. Let's see what happens. And we talk about the Celtics days. He felt like he could have taken over the reins at point guard when Kyrie Irving left in 19, and the Celtics really didn't give him a chance to. They chose Kemba over him, and we can discuss, and we talked about this in previous podcasts, discuss whether that was a sound decision. I don't think anybody figured that Kemba's knee would fail him so quickly and that he would become kind of a shell of himself within 1 to 2 years of that deal and out of the league now. And, I know he's playing in Monaco and seems to be doing good things there, and I hope he can get one more chance to get back to the league. But Terry felt like, that's the one thing about Terry. He's Youngstown, Ohio, through and through. He's got that confidence. He's a guy who's come from nothing, has had, and has made something of himself. So I think he'll step up his game. So I'm not concerned about that as much as the system. How does him and Hero play together? Because you kind of remember Hero likes to get his shots up too.
He does.
And so will Terry say, okay, instead of 19 shots a game, I'll take 12, okay, and distribute. But I think that's something he'll have to do, maybe on the occasional night that he's hot, or that, they draw up some more plays for him, or, it's just a favorable matchup. But I think he'll have to sacrifice.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be watching for more than anything else. So, not to hammer the point home, but just it's going to be an interesting fit. But you trust Miami in essence that they did their due diligence, Heat culture, the whole nine. They're not going to bring in somebody there that doesn't mesh with that that mantra that they have, especially with Jimmy and Bam, being the leaders of that proverbial roster. Let's switch gears to the news that I'm sure, again, when we talk about things I didn't see coming. While it's been bantered about that Adrian Griffin might not have been the best fit, yes, there was some early stuff going on with Terry Stotts stepping down as his associate head coach, and that all happened earlier in the year. But this team was 30-13. And then we get news that the Milwaukee Bucks said, you know what, Adrian Griffin, that's enough. Thank you for your time. You're getting your walking papers. Then as the day continues to unfold, and I don't even know as we're recording, more stuff might have come out, but that Doc Rivers, former Celtic friend, consulted, Adrian on what it's like to be a head coach and how to command the locker room and all of those things. And now Doc is being considered for the job. Doc is a very approachable individual. I think you've even said in here on this show, like, hey, Doc makes you feel good. He's personable. But at the same time, there's been stuff out here that, is Doc the most, I don't want to say the most scrupulous individual, at times. And I think there's some stuff bantering about on NBA X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, that he might have snaked Adrian Griffin here a little bit. Either way, he's being considered for the position. Griffin is out. A lot of people are stunned and floored that he didn't get a chance to really fulfill the season. Like, what do you expect from a first-year guy? What can you tell us from what you know, any Bucks contacts that you might have, that why Adrian Griffin didn't get a chance to at least even finish his first season here in the NBA with a 30-13 record at this stage of the season?
Yeah, Warren, I think it was the defense, first of all. They just haven't played Milwaukee Bucks type defense. And what that forces you to do is to win a lot of shootouts. And the Bucks, what they've done, unfortunately, is win a lot of shootouts. And I just look at the last two games, okay, this favorable schedule here, the one the Celtics don't have that we talked about. Games against Detroit, basically fighting off the Pistons, 141-135 and 122-113. Like, just literally like having to fight off the worst team in the league. Then a 40-point loss at Cleveland, I think,
Giannis rested that game, but yes.
Yeah, without Giannis, but still.
Yep.
And then having to beat Sacramento 143-142 in overtime, a game they probably should have lost. I think Malik Monk missed some free throws that would have given the Kings
and some questionable refereeing as
exactly as Mike Brown pointed out.
Yep.
And they beat a Stephless. They have to fight to beat a Stephless Golden State team the night before that. Then was that impressive win over the Celtics. But before that, a loss against Utah that they trailed by as many as 31 points, a home loss to Utah, then a loss at Houston where they lost despite Giannis scoring for 48 points and 17 rebounds. So if you look at this, Warren, it just doesn't seem right in Milwaukee. They seemed like they were primed. Remember, they lost in the first round last year. It seemed like with the right matchup or wrong for them, if they finish the second or third and they match up with the Knicks or someone like that, a rugged physical team or whoever comes up, that might have been a really, really competitive first round series where the Bucks might have gotten knocked out again. And I just think there's just too much to lose at this point. Lillard is not getting any younger. Middleton is not the player he once was, as much as I'm a big Chris Middleton guy, came from nothing, second round pick. You can just see physically he's not quite himself like he was. Brook Lopez is 36. Jay Crowder's 33. Pat Connaughton's 30. Like, they're not young, right? You want to count Malik Beasley and Marshawn Beachum and some of those guys who are kind of on the end, you can, but it's an old team and they've got to bring it because their window is closing. You're not going to bring a lot of free agents to Milwaukee. So you're able to and if you're Adrian Griffin, you're like, well, you traded Drew Holiday, you got me a guy in Lillard who can score but doesn't defend, and you gave me an old team, but like, okay, go win. But I think some of these, unfortunately, a lot of first-time coaches fail. Doc Rivers failed in Orlando. There's a lot of first-time coaches that fail. And then the second or third time, we could go Mike Malone in Sacramento. We can go a lot of places, a lot of coaches who are successful now, right, were fired at one time. Our friend Mike Brown has been fired 3 times, I want to say. Cleveland twice. Cleveland and the Lakers, and I think Cleveland twice. J.B. Bickerstaff in Cleveland has been fired. Tom Thibodeau has been fired with the Knicks. Rick Carlisle's had his issues before in the past. Like, if you look at the coaches around the league, all of them, except maybe Eric Spoelstra and Jamal Mosley in the East, have been fired. And Wesley Unseld, who's probably about to get fired. I'm looking at the West. Ty Lue, Frank Vogel, Willie Green is his first job. He's hanging in there. Like Jason Kidd has been fired. Like it, most coaches have been fired. So this is not to say that Adrian Griffin can't coach a team. He just can't coach this team. And I just think the Bucks are like, we just didn't. What they probably should have done is gone for a more experienced, savvy coach for the second time around, third time around, who can lead a team, as opposed to Adrian Griffin, who might just not have the stripes yet. And we all saw the struggles at times that Joe Mazzulla went through in his first season as an NBA head coach. It's not easy. So I'm sure Adrian Griffin will land somewhere eventually. But it did go 30-13, but I think if I'm not mistaken, Warren, it was the easiest schedule in the league. And they also, of those 43 games, 23 were at home. So they had a home-heavy schedule, one of the easier schedules in the league. And, I'm sure the defense, I'm sure the folks said, okay, we should be better than 30-13. And we should be allowing less than 120.5 points per game. And they are, if I look at my nifty, they are 15, 14, 13, 12, 11th in the East in points allowed. I mean, and that's not Milwaukee basketball. If you're looking for a reference, the Cavs are first. The Knicks and the Celtics are tied for second at 110. So they're allowing 10 more points per game than the Celtics. That's hard to win consistently late. And when you're playing elite teams, when you're allowing 10 more points than some of the good teams in the league. There's only one team in the West allowing more points than the Bucks, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. So you're talking about a bottom 10 defense, bottom 5 defense. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, but the only thing I'm going to say here, Gary, is that teams can make strides, right? And maybe just because Griffin was a rookie coach, but we talked about the Pacers here just a little while ago, right? And so they were 28th, and I think they're only right now maybe 26 in terms of their defensive rating. But over the last 15 games, they are in the middle of the pack. So changes and adjustments can be made. So to me, it signals it has to be more than just a defense. Like it seems like there had to be some semblance of a disconnect there. So it's fine if we don't necessarily know what that is. But
problems on offense, we all saw the public kind of argument between Giannis and Griffin when they played the Celtics at court, right at the scorer's table at TD Garden, when Giannis waved them off, like, I don't want to come out. No, I don't want to come out. I don't think you heard me. I don't want to come out the game. And then they argued. Giannis stayed at the scorer's table and then checked in at the next dead ball. So, like, okay, who's running the team here? Right. I just think the attitude, and Griffin's one of those guys that probably a lot of players did not know, that he's been around, not to say, but, we don't know the kind of guy. Like, Griffin is kind of, after a solid career as kind of a reserve and a glue guy, he's coached around these circles. And so you don't know the personality of some of these guys, right? You don't know until they get on the hot seat. Like I think of a guy like Ime Udoka. A lot of people, on the floor, did not know a lot about his style, who he was, because he was the guy who was just next to Pop. He wasn't one of these assistants like Sam Cassell, Sam, some of these guys. So is their personality, fit the team, fit the situation? And I think Griffin probably didn't fit that situation. Now, should the Bucks have hired Charles Lee, who was on Budenholzer's staff, maybe? Man, I'm sure they were considering that, and now he's in Boston helping the Celtics out. But if you're the Bucks, I just think there had to be a disconnect. As you alluded to earlier, the situation with Terry Stotts, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna get a veteran coach in here to put his hand on my shoulder and say, Adrian, do this and do that, and suddenly he comes at, apparently, according to reports in the Athletic, like he came at. He kind of embarrassed Stotts in front of the players, and you get your ass over here for this coaches only meeting. And he was like working with Dame on something. And then Stotts is like, okay, I don't like this vibe. This is not how I'm a grown ass man. I'm getting the hell up out of here. So who knows what kind of behind the scenes coach Griffin is, whether he had the style, whether he has the basketball acumen. We don't know. Not every long-time assistant is worthy to be a head coach. There's guys, as we see in the NFL, there's great coordinators who become bad coaches. And the same thing.
Well, even in the NBA, not to cut you off in essence, but I think of one guy specifically, only because he started here in the Miami area where I am, is David Fizdale, and he's just wasn't able to.
Yes, he had two chances, right? In Memphis and in New York, and hey, you're Spo's guy, and you were there for those title teams, and everybody loves you, and 0 for 2. So Fizdale's now, was he in Phoenix? Under Vogel, after he's bounced around in Utah before that. So if you're the sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes great assistants don't become good head coaches. And that's been like that for years.
So before we close out, just your thoughts on the rumor of Doc and any controversy that might be surrounding that. And do you think Doc would be a good fit, in that situation for the Milwaukee Bucks?
A lot of pressure on Doc. Might be his last chance. I think Doc has to view it that way. Like, I might not get another job if I pass this up. He's got to think about his long-term future. I know he wants to win another championship. I know he was upset about what happened in Philly and kind of felt like he got fired by James Harden. And then Harden turns on the Sixers, so he felt like he got screwed. Now, do you think Nick would Doc have done the same job as Nick Nurse is doing in Philadelphia? His whole thing, as I've talked to him in the last couple of months, was it didn't take a rocket scientist to put the ball in Maxi's hands and let him be all-star caliber. And then, Embiid flourishes from there. So kind of unfair to judge Doc of whether, look at what Nick Nurse is doing. Doc would have never done that. I don't know if that's the case, right? But Doc's had some opportunities where he's blown in LA, that bubble team that blew a 3-1 lead and then Paul George, I was right there when he said basically, it wasn't like, it was championship or bust this year. What? You sign Kawhi and you bring on you and Kawhi, and it's not championship or bust. Y'all got 3 to 4 years to figure this thing out. So it's a risky move, I'll say, Warren, not because Doc can't coach, but the situation, the relationships, mid-season. But does Doc grab at this and say, you know what, this is probably my last chance? The younger players aren't really vibing with me. You hear all these guys who played for Doc or over the year, I didn't like playing for Doc or Doc this. So he's not the popular guy he was 10 years ago. And, where the coaches coach and everybody, it's not that way. So if you're Doc, I think you got to really think about it. And I think if you're Milwaukee, you've got to get somebody who knows what the hell they're doing to go in there and go, okay, Giannis, Dame, this is what we're going to do. We're going to highlight you here. We're going to change some things here. And you're going to have to trust me on this because I trust you.
Last thing here is, how much do you think Giannis and Dame had an impact in this decision, and then I guess the potential decision to bring Doc in?
Yeah, I think it's probably a level of unhappiness with both. And I think if Doc's out there, and apparently he was hired as a consultant or something for the Bucks, or, like Van Gundy's a consultant for the Celtics. So if that comes up, I don't know if Van Gundy wants to coach again. That's an interesting dynamic. I do think he likes his consulting position with the Celtics, but is Doc saying, well, I probably would have done this differently? We don't know. It's happened before, unfortunately, in the league where guys have kind of screwed other coaches or pushed, gone behind the back or said, well, such and such is a great coach, but I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have done this and that type. I'm just saying, hey, don't listen to me if you don't want to, but that's my, we've all been in those situations like that, and not in basketball, but in life and in friendships and that type of thing. So, I think if you're the Bucks and you're Giannis, I just think you got to get the right coach. And was Budenholzer, obviously it didn't work out there. Who is the right coach? Who is that guy that you would choose, Warren, to step right in game 44 and lead this team to a championship? Like, I can't name the guy. Is Doc the best? Probably, because unless you're going to pull a guy off someone else's staff in midseason and do that, or that guy's at home, like you said, like we talked about Van Gundy,
or
Stan Van.
That's what's interesting.
Or Stan Van Gundy. I mean, there's ex-coaches out there. Lionel Hollins. There's plenty of guys out there who would love to coach in the league, right? And aren't, but are they the right fit? Good. I mean, and for guys, and as much as we all love Giannis, he doesn't seem to be the easiest guy to coach. And the same with Dame. That's just facts.
Yes, sir. That is just facts, and I think that's a great place for us here to wrap here on Believe in Celtics. So 2 big moves that impact the Eastern Conference, one on the player side, one on the sideline side. Milwaukee, as we're recording, yet to name Doc officially as a coach. So we'll see if that ends up pivoting and ends up being somebody else ultimately. But the Celtics have their hands full. They got to focus on what they have to do, obviously playing the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Clippers here over the course of the weekend, and then games against the Pelicans and the Pacers next week as well, too. As always, make sure you stay tuned to everything we do here at Believe in Celtics. We're going to wrap here as I alluded to. Make sure you follow Gary at G Washburn Globe. Always check out his writings at thebostonglobe.com. You can follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. And as that'll do it here, man. Believe in Celtics, man. We're out.